All right, America. So I guess it's come down to this. So the third debate has happened and everybody's got their impressions. I'm reading about it on the news and so forth. And everybody's saying that Trump has essentially conceded the election to Hillary Clinton. And there's no way that he can get the majority of electoral votes or the majority of popular votes that he needs to actually win the White House. While his base is secure, there's no way he can get over the hump, as it were, to get into the White House. And I want to say this. I'm going to tell America, okay, from my perch on high in the ivory tower of wisdom, I'm going to tell America exactly what the deal is with this election. Now, I don't think Donald Trump is a great guy. I completely agree that he has issues. He tends to brag and he tends to boast and he tends to say things about himself that are not true. And I think the problem with this whole set of women who are accusing him of sexual assault is that it is an example of him doing that. Him coming out on a public stage and saying, I've never assaulted women, and being caught in a lie. Now, it's an open question as to exactly what kind of sexual assault he has committed on whom, but certainly he has assaulted some woman somewhere in some way, and he is not the saint of sexual assault that he wants to say that he is. But while I think that Donald Trump does have some issues with the truth and his ego, okay, so far, no one has criminally accused him of sexual assault, and he's so far as I know, and I will say this outright, as far as I know, he has not been accused of a crime in any form, either through his investment deals or his taxes or his personal relationships with his employees. Nobody has sued him. As far as I know, okay, for sexual assault. He may have been sued for some business deals or something. But again, nobody's making light of the big issues involving his criminal and business background in the media, okay? Now, yes, it may have happened, but that's the case for all of us. It may have happened, but until we're brought in front of a jury or a judge and, these things come to court, that's the possibility that we could say about anybody is that they may have done something, we don't know what it is, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But we got to give people the benefit of the doubt. This country is supposed to be about innocence before proven guilty. And to accuse somebody of a crime or say that they're a criminal when they're not even being accused of a crime in court, that's going a bit far. And I think that trying to say that Donald Trump isn't perfect is not the answer, okay? Here's the problem. We know Hillary Clinton isn't perfect, okay? Now, the irony is that she's in the same boat. She's not been accused of a crime in terms of violating security regulations, handling of classified information, in terms of the way that she ran the State Department, all these kind of things. She has not formally been accused of a crime, okay? But the evidence that she has committed a crime, and on top of the evidence that she is lying about her criminal past, and also the evidence that she's lied to Congress about her criminal activities, and just basically is running rings, twirling her nose at Congress is almost overwhelming. The media, while in a sense you could say they've given Donald Trump a hard time, they haven't tried to give Hillary Clinton a hard time, but yet there's this overwhelming amount of evidence, or at least information, that she has basically thumbed her nose at the security issues involving classified material in this country. Not to mention the Clinton Foundation and its dubious dealings with foreigners, and while she was running the State Department, she's still actively involved in the Clinton Foundation. And Benghazi, which is a whole separate issue, okay, and her husband, which is a whole separate issue, and you just wonder, where is it that she actually stops, which is one thing, and the second thing is, Why hasn't she been held accountable for anything? We know that the director of the FBI has come on national television and recited a litany of actions that they were able to determine that she had done while they were operating in this extremely hamstrung manner, because she was the Secretary of State and because to some degree she had some sense of political privilege. Okay, in a sense of a feed forward loop, where the fact that she's a politician gives her some political privilege, and the fact that she thinks she has political privilege means that she doesn't have to show any respect for government regulations and government authority, the FBI, the DEA, none of this. The Defense Intelligence Agency, none of this. You kind of wonder how far off the rails Hillary Clinton is, not whether she's off the rails. We know she's off the rails. Now, Trump has tried to make light of all this stuff, and the problem is that every time he's brought up these issues, she's brought up his personal issues with sexual assaults or his business deals or something like that. The problem with both sides, and they really have both kind of encouraged this game, is that instead of admitting their own faults, they go, okay, but what about you? Okay, let's look at your faults. Let's look at your faults. And we admit that both sides have faults. We realize that both sides have faults. But only one side of this equation has been in government office as the senator and as a Secretary of State, has held high office in this country and has abused those offices. Okay? And I can only tell you that one of the fundamental things that a government employee knows as a clearanced, as a holder of a clearance, you are trained repeatedly to either respect the fact that this is classified information you're dealing with, and to follow a number of very clear restrictions and procedures that the government has for dealing with classified information, or you don't, or you don't. And if they catch you not doing it, you're going to be fired from your position. You're going to lose your clearance. You're going to be investigated. And if there's any credible evidence that you have neglected to properly dispose of this classified information, or properly handle it, you're going to be charged and probably incarcerated and put in jail for not doing it. I mean, look, the long history of this country is we've got many successful people in this country who were held in very high esteem, who were criminalized and some even incarcerated for not handling classified information correctly. We won't look at the whole David Petraeus scandal. Ultimately, David Petraeus was forced to resign from his position and essentially charged and admitted guilt to mishandling classified information. Not because he put it on a server that wasn't protected, that didn't follow any of the restrictions, any of the restrictions and security procedures of classified information servers should have, okay? But because he allowed a journalist essentially to see this information, okay? It wasn't like it was on the internet for the Russians or the Chinese to get. It was in his office, and he had this woman in his office, and she wasn't cleared. Or there were people who brought information. I remember Mondale, for instance, for a while there was under suspicion of having classified information in his house that he had brought home. A number of high-level government officers have been accused and convicted of mishandling classified information, and not to mention line employees, your average GS-10, GS-11, GS-12, your average sergeant, your average, lieutenant, of mishandling and not securing classified information. Now, I think the problem is, in this issue, is that so many people are not part of that environment. But a lot of people are. And I think this really kind of goes to the heart of the issue. Edward Snowden is, in my mind, the clear example of the problem here. He is a guy who who didn't flout security restrictions not one time. He flouted them numerous times. He was essentially fired from a job because he violated security restrictions. But for some reason, the CIA decided to hire him on again, and he was working at the NSA, and he absconded with all these classified information. And now he's the poster child for people on both the left and the right. Those who say that such people are traitors, and I'm certainly one of them, and those who say that he did America a favor, a service, a great service, all this kind of stuff by exposing these classified programs that go against the grain of what it means to be America and stuff like that. Now, that whole discussion about whether or not these things should be going on is one thing. But without a doubt, what he did was criminal. There's no question. There's absolutely no question that taking classified information out of a government secured facility and disseminating it to people who did not have access to that classified information, did not have legitimate access, had no training, anything to do whatsoever, and putting this in the public eye, that was a clear violation of the entire concept of classified information. He showed an absolute disregard for the very concept of it. My question is, how could you elect Edward Snowden to be president after that? When, first of all, the guy should be in Leavenworth for what he did. Okay? And second, he showed an absolute disregard for the fundamental security of this country by what he did. Okay? He had a case, and certainly had an argument and all this kind of stuff, that the policies were not constitutional, but you don't make that case by going and stealing classified information from the NSA and then spreading it out on the internet. That's a case you can make without doing that. And he should have made it without doing that. Now, the problem is, people wouldn't have taken him seriously if he hadn't had the information. I said, look, you can always make that argument that things wouldn't have worked out as well if you hadn't done what you did. Okay, you can always make that argument. But it doesn't change the fact that you did what you did, okay? Any and every criminal will rationalize what they've done in some way. It's still a crime, okay? And the basic issue is Hillary Clinton has demonstrated an absolute fundamental lack of respect for the American law enforcement, for jurisprudence, for the legal system, for the laws of this country, by what she's done and is doing, and is then trying to cover it up, trying to bribe the FBI into making deals with her and whitewashing the acts and stuff like that, which are even additional crimes. Okay, to then say, we're going to give you, the ability to do something which you shouldn't be doing, and which is illegal now, in exchange for you letting us get away with what we've done already that's illegal. There's all kinds of wrongness in what Hillary Clinton represents. And on top of it, it's not just Hillary Clinton, it's also the collaborators in the government. There's also the collaborators in the Obama administration who have sort of almost turned a blind eye to what she's been doing. To me, she represents a fundamental rot in this government, in our country, of people who have a me first, then the law mentality. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and then we'll worry about the legal issues later. That is a fundamental rot in this country, which is the kind of problem that got us into so many issues. And it just, to me, it's almost like she's being elected president despite that, if not because of that, because so many people in this country are exactly like her in that regard. It doesn't matter if what I'm doing is illegal. What matters is that I think it's ethically the thing to do, or it's such a big thing for me, I'm going to do it anyway. People all over the world have to evaluate at some point in their lives a point where they have to decide whether they're going to do something that's going to be quote unquote good for them, or do something which is legal. Okay? This is a decision that we make on a regular basis. And to me, she simply represents the bad part of the United States, of the American people. She represents what's wrong with this country. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that she isn't popular, but she certainly, in my opinion, is as criminal as you can get, okay, without having been charged and convicted of a crime. And I don't think that she's qualified to be president for that simple reason. I think that you really have to question what it means to be president if Hillary Clinton is qualified to be president. You have to wonder why is she qualified? Is it because she hasn't done anything wrong, or is it because the American people are a lot like her? You know, that she has a lot in common with a lot of the American public. And I think that's a clear statement. But I will say this on the side. If she's elected president, you can forget about having any security in this country in terms of classified information, because everybody and their mother is going to be selling classified information for their own purposes, trading it for their own purposes, whatever. And you're going to find that the American law enforcement agencies like the FBI, a lot of people in the FBI are just going to say, what the hell, fuck it. You know, Hillary Clinton got away with it. How am I supposed to worry about this? You know, it's going to be a matter of their professional pride versus their professional convenience. There's always going to be people who are saying, you know, turn your eye to it, turn away from it, don't pay attention, don't make a big deal out of it, and you'll hold your job. Versus if you do make a big deal out of it, there's a good chance that you're going to get screwed. That not only will the person not get prosecuted, but you're going to be out of a job. And it's a simple case of right versus wrong, in my opinion, at this point. Donald Trump, while he is not the most exemplary person at all, I completely agree with that. He has his faults, no doubt about it. He still is not as bad as Hillary Clinton is. There is no question in my mind that this woman should be in jail at this point, okay? Not running for president. That is an absolute truth. Now, whether or not Donald Trump is Roger Ailes or some other, you know, abuser of his position, his star power, you know, his wealth, whatever, that's a different story. Okay, but he certainly is not a fundamental criminal to American society, a watershed moment in American criminality of having someone who is such a blatant criminal elected president. There's no question in my mind about that, and I think that is the summary point. This woman is not presidential material in a country that we think America should be. She is presidential material in a country that we hope America should never become. We look at Edward Snowden and we say that what he did was good for the country as a whole, and it was bigger than the issues that he was involved with. She has absolutely no redeeming qualities along that line of argument, that there was a moral issue that she had to address that was bigger than the security restrictions. There is nothing like that in this case. She simply did what she wanted to do because she didn't want to walk away from her Clinton Foundation or activities, and she didn't want to walk away from these high-powered donors. She wanted to exploit the Clinton Foundation and exploit these high-powered donors while she was Secretary of State. She exploited her office as a Secretary of State, and she basically mixed her professional and her private lives. And she didn't want anyone outside of the Clinton circle to know. She didn't want anyone to know. She didn't want anyone to know what she was doing, is the point, okay? And ultimately, when she got caught essentially trading classified information on her private server, at that point, she then didn't want anyone to even look at her private server and see what else is going on. So she did everything she could. She pulled every string she could to keep the FBI off her servers, okay? To keep the FBI off her laptops, to keep the FBI off her servers. All the things that the FBI should have done, they didn't do because she clearly abused her position. She clearly abused her political connections. She clearly abused her financial connections for God knows what end. We really don't know, okay? And this is exactly the kind of person who should be nowhere near government in the United States of America. Someone who has already demonstrated that they cannot separate their personal and financial issues and the public trust. Someone who's already demonstrated that they have no respect for the legal system in that regard. Now she's going to start, oh, but you've sexually assaulted a few women. I'm not denigrating the fact that sexual assault is an issue. I'm not saying that at all. Not saying that in the slightest, okay? But you don't excuse what she's doing or try to cover it up or dodge from it by accusing your opponent of kissing a woman when she didn't want to be kissed, okay? Or even of groping her when she didn't want to be groped, or even of using his position as the boss to intimidate his subordinates into having sex. That doesn't cover what she did, okay? And we have to keep that in mind. Maybe Donald Trump has some issues with that, with women, okay? But that doesn't mean Hillary Clinton should be president. And that is the big issue. She shouldn't be president. She shouldn't even be a candidate. She should be in jail. That's the bottom line. And the question that we really have to look at now is, how are we going to get from here to where she's president with full knowledge of all this? How are we going to get from one to the other without being complicit in it? Without being complicit in what she's done wrong and what she represents as a person. And then turn around and say, well, we didn't elect Donald Trump because he's assaulted a few women. How does that make sense? How does it make sense to hop on a high moral ground about Donald Trump and then allow Hillary Clinton to not just skate for far worse things in a far more egregious manner, but also to become president of the United States? How can we morally do that? If anything, neither one of these two should be president. If anything, the GOP should have rejected him, but the Democratic Party should have rejected Hillary Clinton also by that same token. It doesn't make sense to vote for Hillary over Trump, okay, because she's less of a issue for women in terms of sexual assault. That ignores the issue that she is for women in terms of security or in terms of abuse of power. That's almost to say it doesn't matter to women that she's abusive of her power, that she's exploited her position for financial gain. Almost like the only thing that really matters to women is that she hasn't grabbed any women by the crotch, or she doesn't try to force herself, and rub on whatever on other women. I mean, that's all that matters to you? Is that the only concern that you have here? I'm not even going to get into her leftist, left wing, open borders, blah, 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 all this kind of left wing stuff. That's politics. That's legitimate politics. That's a different issue. I'm simply talking about her respect for the law, her respect for the government, of the very government she wants to be president of. She doesn't even respect it while she wasn't president, but now she thinks that she should be president despite that. That is just insane. And anyone who votes for this woman is essentially not just insane, but criminally insane. And that is, I think, the thing that really people in this country need to keep in mind when they exercise the one thing they can do to affect our government as a citizen, okay, is to vote and to show support for these people politically. How can anyone in good moral conscience vote for this woman? I say to this, if you vote for her, you are as guilty of what she has done as she is. Now, you could say the same thing about Donald Trump, but I will say this. The possibility that he has sexually assaulted women, or that he has abused his power or sexually harassed women, okay, is one thing. but to abuse your office as a Secretary of State and as a senator for financial gain, for financial gain, and in the process exposing this country's military and intelligence secrets to our enemies, okay? In the process, selling out your own country for financial gain, okay? Which is the bigger issue? That is the whole question here. If both of them are going to make it to November and be considered serious candidates, we have to look at the larger issue. Okay? We have to look at the larger issue. How do you trade your national security for the ability to say, okay, but she's never assaulted a woman? How do you trade that? How do you do these things? How do you do these things? It's to say that not having any national security is not assault because she didn't touch you. She's just going to make your defense system and your criminal system impotent, okay? And see how that works out for you in terms of your personal protection. That you have an impotent government, an impotent criminal justice system, and an impotent defense system. See how that works out for your personal protection. Now, yes, I'm maybe slightly biased in saying this as a man, but at the same time, I can't personally protect women in this country. I have to rely on the government. I have to rely on the government to be effective. I have to rely on our defense system to be effective. If there's going to be a defense of women in this country, it's going to come from the government and its legal system and all these things. And if you're going to let Clinton skate and give her a pass and give her a get out of jail free card and elect her president, how can you really complain about Donald Trump kissing a few women? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's like a guy is robbing the Social Security system, the Medicaid system, the American healthcare system blind, okay? Robbing it blind. And then you complain about a guy who took, who robbed, who robbed a couple of old women or robbed a couple of women in his neighborhood. How are you going to compare those two things? How does that make sense to forgive and turn a blind eye and wink at the guy robbing the entire country and focus about a guy who mugged a couple of women in his neighborhood or shook down a couple of people in his company? Even if he did do it, it doesn't even begin to compare to what she's done. Okay? And maybe neither one of them want to admit it, but still, you can't ignore the giant crime and then make a big deal out of the relatively small crime. Yes, it is a crime. No one's denying that it's a crime. Okay, except maybe Trump possibly, but the same thing with Clinton. She's denying that what she's done is a crime too. You can't ignore the giant, huge crime in front of you, focusing on a small crime on the side. That's the bottom line. Now, if you're saying that I'm being a selfish man in saying that, how selfish are you being as a woman in denying it? And I think this is what this comes down to. Hillary Clinton is a referendum about women in general in this country. It is a question now of whether women will own up to what she has done and reject her despite the fact that she's a woman. And despite the fact that Donald Trump may have sexually assaulted or sexually harassed some women, some handful of women over his lifetime. It is a simple question of exactly what do you consider to be moral and wrong, and why. And the real issue that you have to look at here is, are you going to give this woman a pass simply because she's a woman, and then expect things to really change in this country for the better for women? I think what this election ultimately says, if Clinton wins, what it ultimately says is that what she's done, and I mean you know as well as I do what she's done, that it's nothing compared to the fact that Trump has groped a few women, or that he is a boastful braggart. Okay, that simply flouting the law when it comes to the handling of classified information, and flouting the law when it comes to classified information in the face of the FBI on top of that, okay, that's nothing compared to the fact that he's kissed and groped a few women who didn't want him to touch him. That is what the issue is with this election. Okay? And I don't know how to really kind of get around this point. It's to say that Donald Trump is absolutely not acceptable because he's a boastful braggart, and because he may have kissed or fondled a few women that didn't want to be kissed or fondled by him. But Hillary Clinton is, if not the ideal candidate, she's okay for president, despite the fact that she has no respect for American law. And this is, and you really kind of have to wonder, if you said that about somebody who was a serial rapist or a child abuser or a murderer or something like that, if you said they have no respect for American law, would you elect him president? No, I think it's that people just don't see what she's done as that big a deal. I think that's the issue. But they see what Trump is and what Trump has done as a huge deal. Okay? And you really kind of have to think about why. Why is it, do you think, that the fact that he's kissed and groped a few women that didn't want him to be kissed and groped, maybe he's intimidated a few women who work for him, who didn't want to have to submit to some kind of sexual or peer pressure or be embarrassed to hold their position, or who felt like they had to kind of prostitute themselves to some degree in order to keep a job. And that may be with any guy or with anyone. Let's put it that way, okay? You see this as a huge problem and don't want to elect him president as a result. You think that outright blocks him from being a candidate for president, despite the fact that happens all over the country almost every day. People sell out all the time to get and keep and hold jobs. Okay? And that's going to continue to go on and go on and go on throughout the history of this country. It is what America is about as much as anything else. Okay? But you don't see somebody who flouts the law, essentially throws their finger up into the face of the FBI about classified information that could be about, if not just sexual assault and sexual harassment in the military, for instance, but also about it in the civilian government, but about anything. Could be on any topic, okay? Information which could be used to enable someone to blackmail or harass or threaten or intimidate, someone, a woman in the military, or a woman in Congress, or a woman in government, or a woman in the private sector by a serial abuser, okay? Or not to mention, put our troops, not to mention put our civilians in harm's way of foreign or hostile governments or hostile foreign actors or hostile domestic actors, okay? And you don't see that. You don't see that as a real problem, not something that's worthy of keeping this person out of the White House. And I just have no question that people don't see that. That she wouldn't even be where she is today if people didn't think that way. And I think this is a lost cause, but I still owe it to myself and to our society to put this video together and at least say, you were told. Okay? Don't say you weren't told. Don't say you weren't warned when you made this choice. Okay? You thought this was the better answer. You thought she was a credible presidential candidate, but you didn't think that way about Donald Trump for doing far less than what Hillary Clinton has done, albeit in a non-physical way. Okay? And I still say that that's at best indirectly. She could easily have enabled this kind of activity by what she's done in terms of her sloppy handling of classified information and her concept that she doesn't have to be held, she shouldn't or can't or won't be held accountable for it. Okay? I am sure that there will be people on Clinton's team, somewhere in Clinton's government, who will engage in blatant criminal activity and go, well, I'm in the Clinton government, and sorry, we're above that. That kind of governmental elitism is well known throughout history. Okay, she's bringing us back to a point. She's on the verge of taking us back to a point in time that every country goes through, and at what point the civilian populace of that country essentially has to revolt to get away from it, because they cannot have a legal solution. The government will not enforce the law with regards to its own members. That is what Hillary Clinton represents. A government which is above the law, beyond the law, above and beyond reproach, simply because it is their government. Okay, I have to say this, since we are a country where we cannot evaluate what a person says based upon the logic of what they say. We must evaluate it based upon their socio-political background, their race, their income, their political affiliation, their voting history, blah, blah, blah. So personally, I would say I'm going to say this knowing that people may or may not believe me, but still, I have never voted Republican. I cannot in good conscience say that I would vote Republican. And I have really been a anti-Republican since the days of Reagan, because I've always seen the Republican Party as a party of bullshitters, of elitists, of people who claim to be morally superior, yet who almost consistently fall flat in terms of their morals and ethics. They say one thing and then do the opposite behind closed doors. And that goes from political favoritism to monetary gifts and paybacks and deals, backroom deals, to sexual scandals left and right involving these politicians who claim to be, against homosexuality, against sex outside of marriage, against having sex with underage people, children, if you will, and so forth. And then you find all these Republicans doing exactly that. And it's just a party of hypocrites, in my opinion, who ultimately are a party of basically white people who support other white people doing white people things. And I think that is the ultimate issue, and they never really want to admit that. And that's the kind of like the core of Trump's support is a bunch of people who are, if not white supremacists, they're certainly white elitists. They're basically almost ready to just come out and admit they're white elitists. But in the end, I don't really see Trump's supporters as so much the problem in this case as Hillary Clinton supporters, because I think Hillary Clinton supporters are basically blacks, women, Hispanics, and left-leaning liberals, Democrats, who basically are saying the same thing, that we don't really care about anything other than the fact that you are black or woman or homosexual or a left-leaning liberal. We don't care what you've done other than that. All we really care about is that you're not a Republican. You're not a moral majority person. You're not an anti-Roe versus Wade person. Well, I think the problem is that we have a clear case of two separate and distinct political camps who have appropriated the Republican mantra of you're either with us or against us. And I think that in this case, you have to choose between Trump and Clinton because they're the product of this political environment. But in this case, I just don't see how anyone with even a sense of ethics and morality can vote for Hillary Clinton knowing the perspective she has on American security and American classified information, on the law and order of this country, on the FBI, and on the government, when she is essentially a communist red person who's taken advantage of the fact that she's a woman who has a husband who's been elected to the president twice, exploited that for financial gain, and now wants to cover her ass, essentially by saying she didn't have any idea that the private server they were running was handling classified information. She didn't have any idea that there were all these restrictions. She didn't have any idea that all this email that she's passing back and forth involved classified information, classified discussions. She didn't know about any of this, and it's just not fathomable that she didn't know. How could she not know? And then when it comes out, and I'm not going to say that WikiLeaks or Edward Assange or whatever this guy's name is, Julian Assange is a respectable person, and these are credible sources. But it's not really a surprise that the facts come out to show that they knew this all along was going to be a campaign issue, and they've been making plans for years about how to deal with it when it became one. They just, I don't know. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I didn't know anything about it. We never knew that this was a problem. It's as bad as this woman talking about her husband. The guy's been, Wiener showing his these sexually suggestive pictures on the internet for years. She's still married to this guy, thinking that this somehow is going to be a situation that she's going to resolve. And suddenly when the shit hits the fan so hard, okay, suddenly she turns her attention back to her marriage and says, it's over, that's it, I don't know anything to do with this guy. This has been an issue that's been boiling for her and for Wiener for years, just as Clinton's sexual activity has been boiling. These are issues that these people have known about for years, but they just think it's not a big deal. Hey, just forget about it. Just don't worry about it. Focus on the fact that she's the first serious woman candidate for president. Focus on the fact that she's not a male in a male-dominated society, in a male society where women routinely subject themselves to this sexual predatory behavior that Trump is being accused of right now. But look, that goes the other way too. We've known for years that men, especially men in powerful positions, exploit their power for sex, for sexual contacts. We've known for years that women are hired and fired based upon their looks as much as anything else. Why is it that it's wrong for these men to do what they do and we have to reject them out on their face for what they do, despite the fact that women pull similar shit, just different shit, but similar shit, and expect us now to ignore it because they're women? That is where I just can't get on board with her. I'm sorry, I'm not going to ignore all the wrongs that are involved with Hillary Clinton and elect her to be president, and then say that I'm doing it because Trump is such a bad candidate, when Trump is a shade of what she's done, a shade of what she represents. There's no question that Trump has issues. There's no doubt about it. But it's like trying to convict a guy for riding a bicycle without a helmet while you ride by him without a helmet on a motorcycle and you're speeding and popping a wheelie and doing burnouts and all kinds of tricks on public highways. You're abusing your public stature, your history, your contacts, everything about politics for personal gain, then trying to condemn your opponent for a fraction of what you've done. A fraction of what you've done. Okay, maybe you haven't, leered on, kissed on, licked on, squeezed on, felt on any of your subordinates. Okay, maybe you haven't. Maybe, okay? But do you really want us to sell our souls to you because you haven't fondled any of your female employees? That is the question here that America has to face, is the fact that Donald Trump may have fondled women who didn't want to be fondled, okay, worth having Hillary Clinton be president when she should even be in jail right now? And Trump, while he does stretch the truth, if not outright lie, on quite a few things, okay, he's right about that. He's right about quite a few things also. And Hillary Clinton is certainly lying about her understanding of what was happening with those emails. She's undoubtedly lying about it. She could not have not known that she had classified information passing across her desk on a regular basis and wasn't taking care of it properly. That's her responsibility as Secretary of State, as the head of the department. Even if she was a mid-level functionality, it's still her responsibility. How can you claim that you didn't know and you had nothing to do with it? That is absolute bullshit. And there's no way in hell that I would vote for this woman to be president thinking that she should be in jail. Honestly, seriously, she should be in Leavenworth for what she's done. Leavenworth, whatever. Okay, now and this is the other half of it. It's not just the issue of the legalities, the criminal negligence or criminal intent, and the criminal punishment. It's also the larger statement about how I did this, wink, wink, okay? I didn't do this, wink, wink, but it doesn't have any reflection on me as a president, which is bullshit. It utterly, totally does. It completely does. And second, to think that it was an inconsequential thing that she did, okay? Classified information, there's a lot of information that's classified that maybe it shouldn't be classified or it doesn't, or it's not necessarily an issue classified that it's a national security issue. Sometimes it's just classified out of politics, possibly, who knows. But how are you going to say that she won't be worse? How can you credibly say that a woman has no respect for the system of classified information that we have in this country that trades in classified information for personal and political gain? Okay, how can you say she will not be worse at this? That she won't be an even bigger problem with this? How is that credible? A woman who trades information for cash and political access for cash, how is it credible to say that she won't be worse than we've ever seen? That we won't be returning to the dark days of God, the Caligula or whatever, at some point where anything goes in that office, as long as it serves her political and financial contacts. How do we know it won't be worse? When she's done that, she has done exactly that as the Secretary of State and gotten away with it. And gotten away with it not because the FBI colluded with her, but because she essentially intimidated the FBI into not prosecuting. And last but not least, even if you want to take the position that, okay, what she's done, it's all political, it wasn't a physical assault. It's not like she physically harassed or physically sexually assaulted anyone. Okay, that's not necessarily the case on one point. And second, it doesn't mean it won't happen downstream. Just because she is a woman and supposedly won't try to rape another woman, okay, that doesn't mean that she won't harass another woman, that she won't intimidate another woman. It doesn't mean that she won't harass or intimidate another man. And it doesn't mean that one of her aides or one of her associates won't engage in exactly that kind of behavior and then think he's clear because he's a close associate of Hillary Clinton. That just because she won't do it, that doesn't mean that someone under her won't do it and then think they can get away with it. And you might even find that there are more women sexually harassed because of the shield of being a Clinton associate. There's no question we don't know who works for her exactly or what they have done because they are under her exact same kind of political immunity. And that is the thing. She represents an entire mentality of law breaking. Okay? Where you may have some isolated cases of issues with Donald Trump. I'm not going to say that they're not law breaking. At least he doesn't walk around going, hey, whatever I do, it's beyond scrutiny. Whatever I do, I'm going to deny that I did anything wrong. And whatever I do, the FBI or whatever can't really investigate it, can't investigate it because I'm Donald Trump. You can't investigate me. Or I'm the first person from Queens to run for the presidency. Therefore, you can't investigate me. Or we're gonna pull strings to make sure you don't investigate me. At least he's not walking around saying he's above the law. Okay. Essentially saying that he's above the law. And that's clearly what she's doing. And that certainly has to extend to some degree to her subordinates and her staff. And as the president, that would be the entire executive branch of the government and largely the military. Plus, any of her political affiliations and her economic affiliations to the Clinton Foundation. There's, it's just really... as bad as Donald Trump is, Clinton is worse. There's no question. She's at least as bad as he is, and probably a lot worse than he is. And there's just no way around it. You can't throw down this sexual barrier between the two of them and say that you're going to blacklist him because he's touched women or fondled women or kissed women, and you're going to vote for Clinton. You can't, that barrier just doesn't exist. That's a fantasy in your mind if you think that because he's a man and because she's not a man, that she won't be involved in this kind of crime. It's just not true. There's no reason why she can't indirectly or peripherally be involved in an exact same kind of thing or foster it on a larger scale. If you're the skipper of a vessel in the U.S. Navy, the fact that you're a woman doesn't mean that none of the sailors on that ship are going to suffer from command rape or sexual assault or get raped or something in your ship. Just because you're the captain doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Okay? And if you're the captain, you're getting away with all kinds of criminal activity because your crew is colluding with you. Why wouldn't they collude with you on your criminal activity and then go off and do their own criminal activity in their own in the lower bowels of the ship? It's just crazy to think that your leadership is going to be a law and order abiding leadership when you have a long history of violating the law yourself. It just doesn't make any sense. So to think that women are going to be safer because Hillary Clinton is not a man is nonsense. That's self-serving female non-logic. It makes no sense. If she's engaged in ongoing criminal activity, never gets caught, never gets held accountable for it, even when she's caught, okay, how can you think that the system of law and order is going to protect you any better? How? That's nothing but wishful thinking. That's nothing but people thinking that because she's a woman, somehow things are going to be better. Just because she's a woman. It just does not make any sense at all. And I think this is the ultimate issue, is you have a bunch of people sitting here thinking that Donald Trump is going to be a great president because he's not a politician, and you have a bunch of people sitting here thinking that Hillary Clinton is going to be a great president because she's not a guy. Come on, seriously. Since when does the fact that someone is not this or that mean that they're going to be a great president? That doesn't make any sense at all. I think we're looking at a disaster to some degree, because certainly, Donald Trump is a loose cannon, if nothing else. Okay, if nothing else. But I think we're looking at a sociological disaster if Hillary Clinton is elected president. That is tantamount to saying there is no law and order. It simply doesn't exist, and no one should ever try to prosecute you for anything.